Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Should we get started, or are we waiting a few more minutes?
Yeah, I think we can start.
Okay. Okay, then assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Hold on, I can turn my camera on. Today we'll be talking about the life of a lawyer and how you start from getting into law school, passing the bar, and then starting practice. So before we get started, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. If in the chat box, you can tell me what types of law do you know about and what do you think lawyers do? I'll give you guys a couple minutes to start sending things. So if anybody has any ideas of what areas of law there are. So I know a lot of people know about like criminal law, but anything besides that. Okay, so I'm getting some answers, and so we have immigration, family, civil rights, patent, corporate. Awesome. So all you guys are right. So these are all areas of law that we have. A lot of people, when you tell them that you're going to law school or you're planning on being a lawyer, they assume that you're going to just be doing criminal law and representing criminals. But there's a lot more to law than just that. So let me go on to the next slide. So some areas of law besides criminal are immigration, personal injury, civil rights, public interest, business, family, and government law. There's two major categories of law. There's the criminal law, and then there's civil law. So criminal law includes all of the criminal actions, right? Murder, all that stuff. And then everything else, so immigration, personal injury, civil rights, everything else falls into civil law. And so there's two different courts that govern that sort of situation. So there's a criminal courts for criminal law, there's a civil courts for civil law. So some things that lawyers do is like people just assume that, oh, you're a lawyer, you're going to court every single day, you are going to be arguing in front of a judge every single day. That is not true. I think statistically speaking, 97% of cases are settled outside of court. So on a day-to-day basis, what lawyers do is they advocate on behalf of their clients or the groups that they're representing. They educate the general public about whatever action it is or whatever topic that it is that they are advocating on behalf of. They do defend their clients in legal proceedings. We also draft documents, contracts. We send a lot of letters to opposing counsel with like demands, negotiations, things like that. We negotiate and come to a compromise. And we try to help two parties that are on two opposite sides come together and come to a compromise that works for everybody. And then we also regulate administrative agencies, which means if there's an administrative agency going on, like the FDA, people may have been hearing about the FDA right now a lot because of the vaccine and all of that. So lawyers are also a part of regulating those administrative agencies and making sure that they adhere to the laws that they're supposed to be adhering to. Some of the useful skills that you would need to become a lawyer, I guess. This is not a comprehensive list. This is very limited, just things that I could think of while I was making these slides. But some things you would need is creative thinking and critical thinking, the ability to think on your feet. Because if you are in court and the opposing party or the judge asks a question that you don't know how to answer, you can't just say, be right back. You have to think of a valid answer that won't jeopardize your client's case. The other thing is, like, sometimes if you have a client on the stand and they say something that was unexpected that you guys didn't talk about at all before, you have to be able to know how to minimize damage should it be negative to their case. Other things, you need to be able to read quickly and understand what you're reading. A lot of our work is reading and writing things, so we do a lot of research. You have to read a lot of cases and be able to pull out the facts that are useful and the facts that are not useful, and then the law that's useful, and then how to apply that law to the facts. So comprehension is really important in that. Strong communication skills are really important because a lot of what we're doing is talking to clients, talking to opposing counsel, talking to the judge. The ability to read it and write, like I said, to write concisely. So instead of having long run-on sentences, being able to say what you need to say in the shortest amount of words, and being able to convey that persuasively to convince the other side that what you have to say is really worth listening to. You have to be detail oriented. There's a lot of little details that you have to, structure wise. If you're structuring a letter or a brief or something, there's little details that have to be addressed. And so you need to be detail oriented. Time management and prioritization. Cases take up a lot of time. And like even just law school studying takes up a lot of your time. And so you have to be able to figure out how you're going to be managing your time so that you can have a proper work-life balance. There's also a lot of pressure and stress. So stress management and the ability to work under pressure. Some people cannot handle the pressure. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you don't figure out how to work around that or figure out how to work under the pressure, then it'll be difficult. Then there's just training, technical knowledge, basic computer skills. These days, everything is on the computer, right? So you're gonna need to know how to use Microsoft Word, Internet Explorer, Chrome, whatever. The ability to work as a team and independently. Not everything that you do is going to be just you doing it on your own. A lot of work, there's a lot of work that's done collaboratively. So you'll be working not just yourself, but you'll have like a legal assistant working with you, maybe another few lawyers working with you. You may have a supervisor or boss that you are, working with or under. And then you will also, especially if you're like in a negotiation situation, you'll also be having to work with the opposing counsel to come up with an agreement. So being able to work with other people is really important, but then also being able to work independently. You can't always rely on everybody else to do their job. You can't always rely on anybody to step in where you need to be at that moment. So you have to be able to do both together. All of these skills you don't necessarily have to have before you go into law school. These are things that they do cultivate in school. They help you figure out if they'll help you. They help teach a lot of these in law school. But if you feel like you have a little bit of these skills, I think you'd be good to go to start thinking about going to law school. So next slide, we will talk about pre-law and what it takes to apply for law school. So law school is a graduate program, which means that you have to have a bachelor's degree to get in. So when you're doing your bachelor's degree, you'll probably be in your junior or senior year taking the Lsat and applying to law schools. So the two main things that law schools look at are your GPA and your Lsat score. Sometimes if you have a really good GPA, but your Lsat score is not that great, or vice versa, it balances things out. But those are the two things that the law schools really look at. This link right here, which will be sent to everybody after the program is over, takes you to the LSAC guide. The LSAC is the official law school administrative test, website where you sign up for the exam, you submit your applications for law schools, all that stuff you'll do from this website. So if you use this link right here, it'll take you to this guide where you can put in your GPA right now and your LSAT score that you get, and that'll help tell you what your chances are for this you want to apply to, which is good to take into consideration, especially since I think you have to pay a certain amount for each application that you apply for. So when you're in undergrad, things to look for. Your undergraduate GPA, like we just talked about, extremely important. A lot of people think that, you know, you have to do pre-law to go into law school. That's not necessary. When I was in law school, a lot of our class members, we had a wide variety of backgrounds. So we had we had teachers, we had history professors, we had engineers, we had mathematicians, we had music majors, history majors, like there was everybody there. So then law schools also do prefer to see what your background is, what you did your undergrad in, because then it helps broaden your worldview, and it brings in other skills that you may not always get. So pre-law isn't necessarily necessary to go into law school. Just any undergrad, you know, that you're good at, anything that you're interested in, go ahead and do that. Just make sure that your GPA is up to par. Skills that you need in law school, which we already talked about, you know, ability to read and comprehend difficult and dense material, analytical and critical thinking skills, writing skills, and healthy stress management. Like I said, law school does teach you the skills that you need, but your first year will be so much easier if you already have some foundation of these skills. And undergrad is a great time to learn these skills because it'll help you figure out your study habits, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, so that by the time you get to law school, you are prepared and you know how you work, how you study, so that you're not behind in any way. And then the other thing is that law schools do look at when you're applying is extracurriculars. So these extracurriculars don't necessarily need to be related to law. They can be anything, any volunteer work, internships, externships, wherever. It doesn't have to be at a law firm. It doesn't have to be with a court or anything of that sort, you know. My extracurriculars, I used to volunteer at a Sunday school, Islamic Sunday school. And so what the questions that these law schools will consider is, is like, how well-rounded are you? What's your background like? What do you do outside of school? How do you give back to the community? What are your skills, your hobbies, your interests? Because they want to see how you can add to the community that is at the law school. They don't necessarily just want to see how well you do in academia, but how you are as a person as well. But the other thing is, don't overwhelm yourself with too many activities. You want to do something consistently, even if it's just one extracurricular. If you have too many extracurriculars, but you've only done them like once or twice, like you volunteered at a hospital and an animal shelter and the library, and you were teaching, you're a volunteer at a Sunday school, but you only did them like 2 or 3 times each, that won't be as helpful, especially when we get into the next section, which is in the coming sections, which is about getting letters of references. They want to see something consistent, like how you were able to stick to one thing and how you were able to grow, help others grow. And you also don't want your GPA to drop. That's one of the most important things, is whatever extracurricular you do, make sure that it's something that you can handle with your workload, because if your GPA drops, that's an issue for when you're applying to law school. Your extracurriculars, like I said, they also help build professional references for law school. These will be people outside that you're working with in a professional capacity that'll be able to write letters of recommendations for you once you're applying, which will be really important to the admissions process. Next, so you've done your extracurriculars, you're doing your undergrad, all of that. One of the major steps to applying for law school is taking the Lsat. I know there's like the MCAT for going to med school, PCAT for pharmacy school. So the Lsat is the law school admissions test. It's about 100 questions, and it's scored on a score of 120 to 180. It's comprised of one reading comprehension section, one logic games section, two logical reasoning sections, and then there's a writing sample, and then they also do like an experimental section. The experimental section will either be reading comprehension, logic games, or logical reasoning, but it's unscored, and those are just practice questions that they're using to test out to see what kind of questions they can ask in upcoming exams. Each one of these sections is 35 minutes long, so the exam itself total is about 4 hours long. And you get like one break, I think. Resources to study. It depends on what your studying style is. You'll know best. Some people can, prep by themselves, and in that case, you can just get your own, book series. Like I use the PowerScore Bible series. Super helpful to help you figure out, how they break down each section, and then what kind of questions are in each section, and then how to answer those questions. So that's super useful if you find that you're able to study on your own. And then there's also prep courses. So, Princeton, Kaplan, all those places, they have prep courses to prep you for the Lsat with a teacher and other students. And then there's also the official Lsat test books. So regardless of whether you're taking a prep course or you're studying on your own, it's important to, constantly be taking practice questions, because the more you practice, the more you'll be prepared for on the actual test day. So if you can take advantage of an Lsat course, go ahead and do it. If you feel like you can practice on your own, go ahead and do that. But whatever you're doing, make sure you're taking practiced exams. So as we talked about, letters of recommendation. These make a really huge impact. So choose your recommenders wisely. Try to vary the types of people that you ask for recommendations. Find somebody who knows your academic skills, so a teacher or somebody that you've been studying with or learning with, who can attest to your skills in the classroom and how you learn and stuff like that. Then you'll also want a letter from someone who knows you professionally. So somebody that you were doing your extracurriculars with, somebody that you worked with before or volunteered with, something like that, who knows how you work in a professional capacity, your leadership skills, your time management skills, all of that stuff. Definitely ask recommenders to highlight qualities that you think you have. So if you think that you have really great analytic skills and problem solving skills, ask them to include that and how they know that you have that. So you worked on XYZ project which demonstrated that you had XYZ skill. So there will be, each school has different requirements for letters of recommendation. Some people just want one letter and that's it. Some people allow you to submit 2 or 3 letters, and that's up to you. So one thing to think about would be getting a letter that's for multiple schools, like kind of a generic letter that you can submit to multiple schools. And then there's the other category, which is getting a letter that's specifically catered to one school. So if there is a school that you really want to go into, and they have this certain program that you think would be really good for you, ask one of the people who knows you best, that are your people of recommendations, to write you a letter that highlights your skills and how you would best fit into this school, and why it's so important to you, and why they should pick you for that school. If you are on a wait list, so say you applied to the schools and they sent you an email saying, hey, we don't have space, but you're on the wait list, don't submit all of your recommendations. When you're submitting your initial application, don't submit all of your letters of recommendations at the same time. So if the school allows 3 letters, only submit 2. And the thing is that if you get waitlisted, you can submit that third one to like bump your application and let them know that you're still interested. And that may be the qualifying factor that you need to move yourself higher up on the wait list so that the next spot that becomes open, you get it. And then they will ask you to write a personal statement. So personal statements are super important. You're going to really want to put your time and effort into this. You're going to need to write multiple drafts, and you're going to need people to edit it and give you feedback on what you're writing about. So how you would pick for a topic is look at your full applications, look at your resume, look at your strengths, your weaknesses, and think about them. And then think, if you were a stranger reading this, so if you were the person who is in the admissions council and you're reading this, what questions would I have about me? So answer your personal statement to answer that question. And if you can't think, in some schools, they do have a question, like a prompt. They'll say, write about an event that changed your life or something like that. But other schools don't. And so in that case, write this, like if I was looking at my resume and everything that I have, my qualifications, what questions would I ask about me? So write your personal statement on that, and put your time and effort into it. Make it the best that you can, because this is the one way that they're going to learn about you. Most law schools don't have an interview process like med schools do. So this is the only way that they get to know who you are as a person. Outside of just like the little details that are like, in a letter of recommendation or that are in your resume. So put a lot of care and effort into this. I cannot emphasize that enough. Then most schools will have a diversity statement, and they usually say it's optional, but as a Muslim person, you fall into a diverse category. So if the school has the option to write a optional diversity statement, do that, because this gives them more information about who you are. And schools are always looking to admit diverse candidates. So this will give you a leg up in that scenario. And so that one, they usually also have statements. They'll have a prompt that says, write about this or that. But if they don't, just outline how you are diverse and how your diversity will add inclusivity into the school. And then things, so you've written all your stuff, you've got your letters, you have your resume, and now you're starting to apply. So things to consider when you're applying, how to find the right school. So the first thing would definitely be location. So some things that are important to some people is they want to go to school near their family, or they want to be in a certain area. You want to go into school in the same state that you are. Well, that's a big consideration. The other thing to think about is, where do you want to practice? So do you plan on living in Texas for a really long time? Do you plan on staying here? You want to practice in the state of Texas? Well, then consider applying in Texas. But if you want to say you want to practice in New York, you have a really big desire to practice in New York, then you may want to consider going to a law school in New York. Just because they will, you'll learn a little bit more about the laws of New York while you're studying in school. The other thing to think about is scholarship. Scholarships are super important because law schools can get expensive depending on where you're going to. So consider the scholarships that you're getting from the school, and then any external scholarships and how those apply to your law school. And then some other things, not super high up, but considerations are different for everybody. School ranking is important to some. You can just type in like X school ranking and see what they're ranked throughout the United States. There's like the top 14 schools, there's like the top 50 schools, so on and so forth. And then one other thing to consider when you are applying is, what areas of law does the school cater to, and what types of curriculars and clinics do they offer, externships and things like that. So if say you want to practice business law, and your school is known for their externships to business boutique law firms in the area, that may be something that you want to consider applying to, versus if you want to do public interest, you're interested in working for a nonprofit or serving an underserved community. See if they have clinics that cater to that. So those are just some things to consider. These considerations are different for everybody. Some people think that location is super important, and so that's going to be their number one consideration. For some people, school ranking is super important. That's their number one consideration. So whatever is the most important to you, but these are some things to keep in mind as you're applying to law schools. So you applied to law school, you got in, mashallah, congratulations. What is law school like? So law school classes are taught in the Socratic method. They're also known as cold calling. So what they'll do is there'll be a classroom similar to like this picture. Rows and rows of students are sitting there, and the professor is standing in the front, and the professor will say, okay, we're talking about this case. They will open the roster, pick a random name, and say, Mr. So-and-so, can you tell me about this case? And then you have to, break down the case. The professor may have questions that he's asking that are specific to that case that he'll be guiding you in one way or the other. And so you answer those questions. Everybody's listening. That was exactly what I hated about law school. Was I hated being cold called. But some people think it's great, and it's not that big of a deal, because at the end of the day, nobody's really paying attention. Everybody forgets if you messed up, so it's not that big of a deal. But that is something to consider, especially if you don't like public speaking or you're deathly afraid of speaking in front of other people. That may be something that you want to cultivate in undergrad to start overcoming, so that it's not a hindrance for you when you start law school. There's lots of reading. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of reading in law school. So case books, your textbooks will be like this thick. And for each class, you have to read an average of 50 pages per class per day. And you'll have classes, every single day of the week, weekday. So there's a lot of reading involved. You have to be able to know how to manage your time. You have to be able to figure out the best way that you study, how to take the best notes, to be able to extrapolate the important case facts and the law, so that if you get called on, you're prepared. So a lot of reading. And then grade-wise, more of the old school schools, they still have grades that are just based on one final exam. So the school that I went to, for most of my classes, my grade was 90% the final exam, and then 10% participation throughout the semester. But some schools are changing their methodology, and they realize that that's not the best way to go. And so they're including midterms, class assignments, things like that, so that you have a better way of getting that final grade to be a better grade than it would be if it was just based on that one final exam. Summers, you don't have summers. There's no such thing as summer break in law school. Summers are spent working. So you'll either be doing internships at firms, at organizations, you'll be working with county courts, doing judicial clerkships, whatever it is that you want to do. So when you start law school, don't automatically assume that you have to know what you want to do, where you want to go, what you want to practice. A lot of people come in and they don't know exactly what to do. So that's what the summers are for. Apply to things that you think you might be interested in, and see where that takes you. Do you enjoy doing that? Go for it. There's some things like judicial clerkships, which hold a little bit more prestige. And so people do it just for the standings, so that later they can say, oh yeah, I clerked for so-and-so judge, which is great if that's something that you're into. And then just know that the people that you're working with, the firms, the judges, whatever, these people will be letters of recommendations for you when you start applying for jobs. So, always be on your best behavior, do the best work that you can do. And also remember that some of these places, a lot of these places, the firms, the organizations, they hire from their interns after their interns graduate. So if you say in your first summer, you start working at a firm that you really like working at. So they say, hey, do you want to come back next year and work with us too over the summer? You say, okay. then you may want to consider the fact that, they may be offering you a job in that year, at the end of your second summer. So again, professionalism is always key. Always try to do the best work that you can do. And just because, it looks good for you, it looks good for the school. But you'll never have a summer break again. Just letting you know. So 1L is your first year of classes. So your first year of classes, you don't get to pick your schedule. The school automatically gives you one. Generally, classes are from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. approximately. And then the basic classes that you have, these schedules vary school by school. Every school has different classes. But generally, in your first year, you learn a little bit of criminal law. You learn contracts, civil procedure, torts, which is like personal injury law. You'll learn property law, constitutional law, and then they will also teach you legal research and writing. So these are a lot of classes. Generally, you'll have 4 to 5 classes that you're taking per semester. And they're going to be multiple classes a day. So to handle all of this, you're going to feel overwhelmed at first. That's only natural because this is a new environment that you're going into, and the way that law school works is very different from the way undergrad works. So if you didn't have any foray into the legal world when you were in undergrad, this is going to be new for you. That's how it was for me. But, as soon as you can, create a study guide, a study schedule to manage your workload, figure out which classes readings you're going to do on what days, at what times, and try to, keep distractions to a minimum. But, take regular breaks, make sure you're taking care of yourself. And then also this is, the sooner that you can figure out how you study, the better, because that's going to be the best way. You can't start preparing for law school final just 1 week beforehand. It doesn't work. Trust me, I've tried. You're gonna need to start studying many, many weeks before the final actually hits. And so what your best course of studying may just be to, keep reviewing the material as you learn it in class. But, you do you. Figure out how you study best and as soon as possible so that you can so you don't fall behind, basically. Don't try to invent a new way to study in law school. If you have a way that you studied at undergrad and it worked for you, try doing that in law school too. Because if you try to study in a new way and it turns out it doesn't work, well, if your final grade is based on your one final exam, then you're kind of stuck. And then in law school too, you will have extracurriculars. So some of the major ones are moot court and mock trial. So moot court is a competitive fake appeal. So you'll have a team of two attorneys, they'll be law students, and you will write a brief, which is, your case based on law, and you'll present an oral argument on it, arguing why the judge should rule in your favor. You'll be presenting this in front of one or many judges, and they'll grade you on that. And then mock trial is slightly different. It's a competitive fake jury trial. And so there'll be, I think it's usually a team of 2 attorneys and 2 witnesses, and the attorneys question the witnesses for their team, called direct examination, and then they'll also question witnesses for the opposing team, which is called cross-examination, and make their arguments based on that. And then again, a jury panel will decide whether or not you were persuasive enough to win. There's also law review, which is law journals that are run and edited by students in that school. Generally, they edit and then publish articles that are submitted by law professors, judges, and then other legal professionals. And then sometimes these articles will contain law student commentary. And so those 3 are the big 3 when you think about extracurriculars for law school. They do hold a certain prestige. Ooh, oh no, what happened? Okay. They do hold a certain prestige. And they're also really hard to get into, but figure out if that's something that you want to join. know that they do take up a lot of time. So you have to make a time commitment. You have to be able to prioritize everything that you're doing and manage your time wisely. And then finally, there's a lot of student organizations. So there's a student organization for pretty much everything. There's like the Board of Advocates. There is the Public Interest Association. There's the Muslim Law Student Association, things like that. And so those law student organizations do things, they help you network with other people, attorneys who are in the fields that you're looking into or the group that you're in. So if you're in a public interest student organization, they'll help connect you to attorneys that work in public interest. If you're a Muslim Law Student Association member, they'll connect you with attorneys that are Muslim and in the legal field. So those are great to help you figure out what you want to do, meet new people. They do organize events that are held at school to raise more awareness about whatever group it is that they're doing. And some of those also provide scholarships. So at my school, our Public Interest Association, they helped raise money to provide like a stipend for students who are working in public interest, because public interest summer internships usually aren't paid. So this would help that person, if they're living on their own, help them pay rent or whatever. And then just some other advice for law school is your law school classes teach you theory. They will teach you the theory of law, but clinics and externships are how you get hands-on experience. So it's all well and good to learn theory, but you don't actually know how to practice as a lawyer unless you do clinics and externships. So if you graduate without a clinic or an externship, you're going to be behind a lot of people because you won't actually know what it's like to practice in the legal field. And doing this helps you practice underneath a licensed supervisor attorney. And that way they'll help you, they'll mentor you and guide you and help you figure out how to do the things that you're learning how to do. And again, like we talked about earlier, this will also be a great way for you to figure out if this is an area of law that you want to pursue. One major thing is your physical and mental health. Law school is time consuming, it's overwhelming. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And you don't have a whole lot of time. So the time that you do have left, you need to prioritize and figure out how to take care of you. Spend time with your friends and family. Sometimes you get so stuck in that law school bubble that you don't talk with anybody outside of it. And then that just adds to the feeling of being overwhelmed. So take time to spend non-law school related time with the friends and family where you don't talk about law school. You just hang out, do your thing, go out to eat, have fun. Eat healthy, exercise, and sleep well. Eating healthy, if you don't eat healthy, your health is going to decline so quickly. And exercise really does help release endorphins and keep you fresh and helps balance everything out. So definitely exercise as well. A lot of people gain a lot of weight in their first year of law school just because they're not eating healthy, they're not exercising, and they're just like emotionally eating because they need the support that the food provides. But later on that leads to an unhealthy lifestyle. So just take care of yourself from the very beginning, and also get enough sleep, because a lot of people don't get enough sleep. There's people who pull all-nighters for like a whole week. Doesn't do anything for them. And in the end, really, it's detrimental to your health and your studying, because then you don't remember what's going on when you're in class. And above all, really, I would say, don't forget to pray. Always make time for Salah, because really, if you make the time for Salah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help you and provide you with, put barakah in your time, really, so that you can get everything that you need done. And the last thing is, you should network. Networking would be, reaching out to people that you know of that are in the legal field, or finding people through social media, through Facebook, through LinkedIn, reaching out to them, if they're like seeing what they're practicing in, and just talking to them, say, hey, can we go out for coffee? I'd just like to talk to you about your law school experience, or what it's like working where you are, or I see that you have this position, and I just want to talk to you about how you got it. And this is a great way, not only just to build a connection so that when you're applying for jobs after graduation, you know some people, but it's also a great way to maybe they have internships available at their firm or wherever they're working, and they can provide you with that connection so that you can find a job that you like doing. All right, next section, postgrad. So postgraduate, you will graduate, and then right after that, a couple months before you graduate, people start pushing bar prep things on you. And you're like, well, I don't really need that, the bar or whatever. And then you graduate and you get to the bar, and the bar exam sucks. There's no way else to say it. It is really, really tough. You have approximately 2.5, I think it would be 2.5 to 3 months to study before your bar exam, and you will be studying. You don't make the mistake that many people do, thinking that they can just get by with what they know, because that's not going to be enough. You're going to need to take a prep course. So there's 2 different types of prep courses that are the main ones out there, but there's a lot of other ones too. Find out which one works best, is the most affordable, what deals they have going on while you're in your 3rd year of law school, and sign up for one. And do all of the work, or as much of the work as you think, not as much of the work as you think you need, but generally they say at least 75 to 80% of the course. And then inshallah, you'll be fine. But a lot of people, some people are working when they study, and so they have to figure out that balance between work life and then studying. Some people aren't studying, and so some people aren't working, and so they're studying 12 hours a day. Figure out what works for you, but know that it's going to be a not fun 2.5 to 3 months that you're studying. And the same rules apply here. You're going to be really overwhelmed. You're really going to be stressed, but do take some time out for yourself, and make sure everything's okay. So you've studied for 2.5 months, and you still don't feel prepared, but it's time for the bar exam. So the bar exam is administered 2 times a year. Things are a little different with COVID. I don't know how things are working right now, but outside of COVID, bar exams are done 2 times a year, once in February and once in end of July, August. The exams vary from state to state. The bar exam that you take for that state is the state that you will be practicing, that you will be licensed to practice in. So if you are planning on practicing in Texas, take the Texas bar exam. But if you are studying in Texas and you know that you're going to be practicing in New York, then there is really no reason for you to be taking the Texas bar exam when you could be focusing on taking the New York bar exam. So figure out where you want to practice and then take that bar exam. Spend the 3 months that you have before studying every testable topic of law. There are about 25 different topics that come up on the bar exam, so be prepared for all of them. For Texas right now, the current exam style is 3 days long. The bar exam is 3 days long. So on the first day, you have the one short answer section, which is 40 questions, and they're they'll give you a question and you answer with one or two sentences. And then there's one research and writing section. And then on day 2, you have a full day of multiple choice questions, which sounds easy in theory, but is very difficult in fact. In the morning, you do 100 questions. In the afternoon, you do 100 questions with a lunch break in between. And then on the 3rd day, you have the essay section, and that's just 12 essays. So you do 6 in the morning, 6 in the afternoon. They are planning on changing the format, and Texas will be joining the UBE, which means that if you take the Texas bar exam, you will be able to practice in other states as well in the future. But I think it takes in certain states, not every state, But the upcoming format is going to be 2 days long and 6 hours each day. On the first day, you have one essay section with 6 essay questions, and then you have 2 research and writing sections. So morning will be the essay, afternoon will be the research and writing sections. And then on the second day, again, it's that multiple choice section. So 100 in the morning, 100 in the afternoon. Hold on, let's go back. So once you take the bar exam, you have to wait a really long time to get your scores back. So you study for like 3 months, and then you wait for about 3 months to get your bar exam results. So it's a long process. It takes about 6 months total to figure out if you're licensed to practice or not. So after you'll take the bar exam, and then your scores will come out, and it varies by state to state, but Texas, because of the amount of people we have here, takes a little longer. And it takes about 2 to 3 months to get your results back. And then once you have your results, then they'll tell you, they'll upload it online, and you'll know whether you passed or not. And if you did pass, then you go participate in a swearing-in ceremony where a judge administers an oath. You swear and say that you're upholding laws of the state, blah, blah, blah. You sign a document, and you are admitted. So the next section will be talking about a little bit about the different types of practice areas. So one of the main practice areas is, when you hear of working in the legal field as a lawyer, you think of the firm. So most there's different sizes of firms. This one is, geared towards like the large firms that you will sometimes, if you're driving through downtown, you'll see big signs for and things like that. It's a very corporate lifestyle. You don't have a 9-to-5 job. You are working very, very long hours. You have to be prepared you'll be working nights, you'll be working weekends, especially in the first few years. You really don't have a life outside of work. Most firms have a 2,000 billable hour requirement. Billable hours are the hours that you're working on a certain case. So there's certain things that qualifies billable hours, but just know that if you have to make the 2,000 billable hour requirement, you will be working way more than 2,000 hours to meet the 2,000 hour requirement. Just because certain things don't qualify, you can't bill for those hours. But on the other hand, they really do pay well. A lot of large firms and corporations pay really well. And they provide you with good resources that'll help train you in the areas of law that you're interested in. There are CLEs, which are continuing learning legal education credits. There's opportunities to, sit in major cases and see like how you want to practice, and the different ways that other people practice. So, the ways that one partner practices in the firm may be different from the way the other partner practices, and you figure out which way you want to do it. And there's also multiple different areas of the law that you can practice in. And then this was some notes from a friend of mine who's a Muslim hijabi in a big law firm. She said that, you're often going to be the first Muslim that they've ever met. You're going to be the first Muslim that they've ever interacted with, so they know nothing about you. You have to make a space for yourself. And this goes for wherever you're practicing in the legal environment. There's not going to be a space for you, because this is mostly a white Christian male job. That's the majority of the lawyers out there. And so when you go in as a Muslim, they don't know what your practices are, what your beliefs are, what you do. And so you're going to be the first. You have to make a space for yourself. You have to teach them about things that you need. You have to teach, if you're fasting during Ramadan, you have different hours and schedules that you're working. You have to let them know about that. You have to let them know about, the things you can eat, the things you can't eat. A lot of networking in firms and outside of firms happen at bars or happy hours. where there's a lot of alcohol involved. And so if you're not, you're not going to the bar, you can't network there. So you need to figure out how to network outside of that, so you're not involved in that environment. So you may have to reach out to attorneys that you want to network with on your own and say, hey, can we go out for lunch instead? Or can we go for coffee or something like that? So it is really tough, to summarize. Tough, long hours. The first few years especially are really difficult, and the first few years you are kind of a glorified intern, really. You do a lot of research, a lot of writing, but you don't necessarily get the first shot at the big cases and things like that, because there's always going to be people that are higher up on the totem pole who get to call the better cases. And then there's public interest. Public interest is working for nonprofit organizations and things like that. That's where I work. For public interest, you advocate for, educate, and represent underserved, marginalized, and or minority communities. So people who cannot otherwise afford or who don't have access to legal assistance. So that'll include low-income individuals. So like legal aids are a public interest organization. I'm sure a lot of you may have heard of CARE. So they're a grassroots legal organization for the Muslim community. There's a lot of stuff for children, because children have, obviously they have a really hard time, especially in family law and the foster care system and all of that. And they're not able to get an attorney on their own. So there's organizations that help with that. And then like where I work is a nonprofit organization for people with disabilities. So any of these communities that, are marginalized in society, or they don't have access to the legal assistance that everybody else does. Also things that we do for people, is we advocate for them. Sometimes if the case needs to go to court, we take it to court. A lot of times we try to resolve the issues outside of court. So we will talk to the opposing party and their attorneys and try to come up with a solution that works for everyone. We also, provide education to people who are maybe not a part of that community, to let them know that, these are issues that this community is facing and how to help address them, and make sure that you don't discriminate against a certain group. A lot of these, for the most part, public interest jobs have a lot more flexible scheduling. You work 9 to 5 weekdays. Very little time is spent on the weekends working. It's easier to maintain a work-life balance with a public interest organization. You are giving back to the community. You are, helping others. There's a sense of fulfillment, and generally, you're working with people who really, really need your help. The only cons would be, it's a smaller salary. You do not make as much as a person who's working in a firm does. And there's nothing that can be said about it, because a lot of these are government funded organizations, or they're funded just by, the people who provide support. So salary is smaller, and it sometimes is harder to find a job depending on what area that you're trying to break into. And then lastly, starting your own firm. Maybe you graduate from law school and you decide that you want to start your own firm. That takes a lot of initiative, and you have to be very determined, because that is very difficult to start. You have to be able to network with other solo law firms and small firm attorneys, get their advice, see how they did their thing, build connections, so that if they get a case that they can't handle, or that's not an area of law that they can address, they know that they can reach out to you, because you do that and send clients your way. And you have to, create a clientele base. You have to be able to find your clients and reach out to those populations, so that they know that you exist, and if they need legal help, they can come to you. There are a lot of costs associated with opening your own firm. So you're going to need to figure out, buy a book or something on like how to start your own law firm. You have to figure out, do you want to just have a virtual office? Do you want a physical office? Obviously, physical offices will probably cost a lot more than a virtual office. So you have to figure that out. Then you'll have to buy practice management software to, keep track of your clients and their cases, because there's a lot of confidential information, and you have to use certain software to ensure that everything's encrypted and kept safe, so that confidential information isn't accidentally leaked somewhere. And then you'll also have to buy research software, because a lot of legal stuff is dependent upon research. And so for that, those research softwares and the research programs do cost a lot. And then finally, just some final tips and thoughts is, okay, don't lose sight of who you are when trying to fit in with everyone else. Always remember who you are, be proud of who you are and where you come from. I'm going through law school as a Muslim woman. I saw a lot of people who were willing to sacrifice their identity so that they fit in with this white legal community, thinking that it's going to earn them status and respect, because if you're like them, they have to treat you that way, right? That's not true. When you whitewash yourself to try and fit in, you lose respect, because they obviously know you're trying to earn their respect, and so they think even less of you. Be proud of who you are, and especially where you come from. Don't lose sight of your Muslim identity. Always try, especially when it comes to how alcohol dominant the legal profession is, remember that remember where the lines are, and what's allowed in the Quran and Sunnah and what's not, and how you stand on that. Your morals will sometimes, you'll question, like, should I go to this event even though I know it's at a bar, but there's going to be a lot of hotshot attorneys there? Should I go anyways? Those, just remember to stand your ground, and inshallah Allah will make it easy for you. Always take the time to pray and read the Quran. It truly gives you strength. Law school is really hard. Working in a law firm is really hard. Things become so much easier with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. And sometimes, we're willing to sacrifice on the time that we spend in reading Quran and praying. But really, when you incorporate time for Allah in your life, He will put barakah in your time. And I'm not just saying that because, every scholar says it. I have the experience, and this, I've gone through this, and it really does help. And a lot of other people have gone through this. So don't take just my word for it. Reach out to other Muslim attorneys and see what they have to say. And it really doesn't take a whole lot of time, it's a few minutes of your time to read Quran, to pray. But it really does help you. And then have a really strong support group, both inside and outside of the legal profession. So inside the legal profession, when you go to law school, you will find out that it's very cutthroat. People are not above, telling on you. There's a lot of snitches out there. And unfortunately, they don't get stitches. They will tell on you if they think that it'll make them look better, if it'll increase their standing. There are people, who, if you're in the library and you have to go to the bathroom, make sure that there's somebody watching your stuff, because so many people will just come and steal your laptop. They'll steal your books. They'll steal your notes, not for any other reason except for that they don't want you to succeed, especially if they see you at it. So find people, the few people in the school or in the legal profession, that you can rely on for support, who you can go to for advice, and who will actually give you good advice and not just tell you things that'll later cause you harm and be a detriment to you. And then also have a strong support group outside of the legal profession, friends that you can talk to and rely on also, for advice, support, and talk to, because you can't always be thinking about law school, law work, your cases, all of that. You need time outside. And then just note, it's not easy. Like any professional program, it's going to be tough, but if you put in the effort, you will succeed. So with that, I think we can open up the floor for Q&A. If you have questions, go ahead and send them through the chat, and then I can start answering them. Hold on, I think we have some questions coming in. Okay, so I think somebody asked how many times you can take it, and I think that's in the context of the bar. You can take it as many times as you want, but again, it's only done 2 times a year. So if you don't pass the first time, you have to wait for a whole another 6 months before you can find out if you're licensed again. And so a lot of firms and places that you are applying to, nonprofit organizations, things like that, they require that you are licensed in the state before you can start working. So if you don't pass the first time, it's likely that you won't be able to practice until you have passed. Unless you're talking about the Lsat, in which case, hold on. If you're talking about the Lsat, again, you can also take that as many times as you want. And when should you start taking it? Lsats are administered multiple times throughout the year. And generally, the results come out pretty quickly too, like within a month. So I think, say you graduate May 2021 and you want to start law school in August 2021. So I think the last exam for that you could take would be, you want your scores out. Usually law school applications open up at the beginning of November. So whatever exam you take, you want the scores to be out by the beginning of November. So I think that exam would be like September, October. When should you start taking the exam? It doesn't hurt to start like in the beginning of your or at the end of your junior year, and because that way, if you take the test the first time and you didn't do so well, you still have time to take the test again 1 or 2 more times, so that you can get that score that you want to get into law school, because there are some schools that require really high scores, and you may not get that the very first time. Next question. How has the pandemic affected people in this field, and how is it different from before? That's a really good question. I think it depends on what field you've been working in. I know I've talked to a few friends who are from law school, and we've shared stories about how things are going on. Some of my friends, the ones who are working in mid-sized to large law firms, they still have their jobs, alhamdulillah. But people that we know of who graduated from law school and they were working in small law firms, so like firms that only had like 5 people working in them, they obviously didn't have the caseload that larger firms have, and so they weren't making as much money, and so they had to lay off the new attorneys that they had hired this year, because there just wasn't enough cases. I am working for a disability rights organization, like I said, and I work on the housing team. And we have more cases this year than we've ever had in the past at this time, just because there's been so many evictions and so many housing crises and things like that due to the pandemic. So it's affecting everyone differently. That's very field specific. And but things have changed with COVID. A lot of people are working from home now, with the rise of cases, in May and in March through May. And then again, like now, courts are closing. And so there is a lot more virtual stuff going on. So you may have to, present in front of a court via Zoom. And so those are things that you need to look at, having a quiet environment, a blank background, making sure you're dressed properly, because there's a lot of people who think that they look fine from up here, and then below they're not dressed properly at all, and then it somehow comes to judge's attention. So things have changed. When are they going to start implementing the new format? I'm assuming this is for the bar exam. The new format for the bar exam, I believe, is going to be starting to take effect February 2021. Is a 3+3 JD program recommended? Do you mean the program where it's like 3 years of undergrad and then it goes directly into law school? I don't have, so I don't have a lot of experience with that, but I don't see why it would be a problem. I guess you should probably talk to somebody who has some experience in that, but just thinking about it, I wouldn't see why it would be a problem. It would save you time, especially if the school has that offer. How long does it approximately take for someone to become a licensed lawyer? So you do 4 years of undergrad, or 3 if you do the path that somebody else asked the question about. 4 years of undergrad, and then law school is 3 years long. So 3 years of law school, and then it takes about 6 months for the bar exam. So I guess if you add all that up, it becomes about 7 years of study from high school. But just law school itself is 3 years. So I graduated from my undergrad in 2016. I started law school in 2016, and I graduated in 2019. After how many years of joining a big law firm does it start getting easy? Never. It's always difficult, but like just levels of difficulty change. The things that you are facing change. I think you're a beginning associate for about 5 years, I think, and then you become like a senior associate, and then after that, then you practice for another few years, and then you can have a chance to run for partner. That's not always something that ends up happening. So about 10 to 15 years at least, if you take things into consideration. And again, it really does depend on how big the firm is, and where you stand in that firm, how your work has been, and how they viewed you in comparison to everyone else. Since a lot of things are digital, how has that affected the process, such as classes and cold calling? That's a really good question. My brother, he just started law school this year, and it's been during COVID, and so his classes are all online. They did have the offer, if you want to, you can go in person, but not a lot of people are doing that. Most of their classes are on a platform, not Zoom, but it's similar to Zoom. And cold calling works the same way. They will, some of his professors, like one of his professors has a hat which has all the students' names in it. He reaches in, pulls it out, and calls that person, and you talk. Other professors will just have like the alphabetical order, and they'll just pick off the roster, things like that. But for the most part, alhamdulillah, with the technology, like things are not super difficult to still continue doing digitally. There's breakout rooms, so people are still put into groups. So when you're doing class activities and stuff, you can still have that. And I think because a lot of ways that people stay connected, at school is like, you hang out with people at school, or like you go out to eat or drink or something together. Now, because you can't really do that, they have groups on, what is it, like not WhatsApp, but like GroupMe for their schools, and just like everybody chats and texts on there. And so you still have that class support for everybody. And then networking, they have virtual happy hours these days, I'm told, where you bring your own drink and everybody sits and chats and talks. And again, you can still reach out to people that you are interested in talking to and just say, hey, can we have a phone call? Can we have a Zoom call? I just want to talk to you about some of this stuff. If someone keeps moving from state to state, do they keep having to take more bar exams? Yep, which sucks. What is the best major for undergrad? Like I said in the beginning, there is no best major. Do whatever is the best for you, what you're interested in, and just see how that can help you in your law school career. And whatever it is, make sure that it is make sure that it is not impacting your GPA negatively. Just to recap, what you studied during your undergrad doesn't affect your chances for law school. You just need to keep your GPA up, take the Lsat, and do extracurriculars. Yeah, basically. GPA is really what matters. Somebody told me that the first year of law school is hard, but the next 2 years are easier. Is this true? Yeah, I in my experience and in a lot of other people's experiences, that is true. For a couple different reasons. And somebody's asking about the recordings. Yes, this will be, the slideshow and recordings, I think, will be available for everyone. So we'll get that to you guys. So the first year is more difficult just because this is your first step into law school. This law school is a whole different ballgame. It's unlike undergrad, and so you don't really know how things are going to be working. So this is your first step, and you are a little overwhelmed. You're just trying to figure out how to handle everything and balance everything. Then by the time that you get to your second year, you've been working on this for 2 semesters. You've kind of figured out how things go. You're getting into the groove of things, and so your classes become the way that you study gets more refined, and you better understand your studying style and how to prepare. More about how the exams are going to be looking like, so you feel a little more prepared when you get to the next 2 years. The other thing is, on your first year of law school, you do not get to pick your classes. You are assigned the same classes as everybody else. In your second and third year of law school, you get to pick your classes. And so you can choose really easy classes, and you can also choose classes that you're interested in, which, automatically makes it a little more easier because you are interested in what you're studying. So in that way, the next 2 years do become easier. And then there's also, the opportunities for things like clinics and externships and stuff. They open up. So some of your classes may be clinics, some of your classes may be externships. And so it's not just theory that you're learning at that point, but then you're also going into the field and you're actually practicing. One thing that I think I forgot to mention, and if you have more questions, please keep sending them in the chat. One thing that I did forget to mention earlier was when you're in law school, there are, to study, you're going to need to, the way that you study is like, you put all your material into outlines to study. You don't have to rely just on your outlines. Reach out to people that who went to the same school, and who did well in those classes. Your schools usually have outline banks. So check out the outline banks and get an outline from somebody who took this class and got an A. And then you can also, there's also outlines just circulating online. So, outlines are available and they're a great way to help you study. Don't rely on other people's outlines for you. Make sure you make your own outlines, but you can supplement them with other people's outlines. I just got a question. What made you go into law school and what led you to realize this is what you wanted to do in life? That's a really good question. I think from the very beginning, I've been really good at mediating and negotiating. And so there's been little instances in life that I can think back on that, I was able to do that, help people mediate and negotiate things. when things weren't working out. And then I was told by a few people, hey, you should consider going to law school. But I think like what really made me realize that I really enjoyed doing this was I really like reading. I'm really good at writing, and I'm really passionate about what I do. So when I went to law school, I already knew that I wanted to do public interest. I have always been passionate about anti-discrimination and fighting for injustice. And so that's been something that I knew that I wanted to do. I didn't know where I wanted to practice when I started. I never thought that I'd end up at a disability rights organization like where I'm at right now. But alhamdulillah, it's been a journey and I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, you find out. So what are some pros of working for a big law firm rather than having your own firm? So for a big law firm, the money really is the only pro for a big law firm. There's a lot of money involved. When you have your own firm, your money is dependent upon the clients that you have. So if there is a period of time where you don't have a lot of clients, you're not going to have a lot of money. And then there's a lot of like big firms, they have a lot of money and resources, so they provide you with free trainings. They provide you, all the programs and resources that you need to be able to do your job. Whereas if you have your own firm, not only do you have to find your own clients, but then you also have to pay for your own resources, pay for your own research to be done and all of that stuff. So those are, there's a lot more expense going into having your own firm. And so if you aren't prepared for that, you don't have the initiative, you're not going to be able to, you're going to have some difficulty. What kind of stuff do snitches snitch on? And can you get someone kicked out if you catch them stealing your stuff? Snitches will literally snitch on anything. In my first law school, we had one of our professors, she would do a quiz every morning. And there was like 4 questions. And so she told us, you're not allowed to write the questions and answers of the quizzes down while the quiz is happening. But because these questions of the quizzes were directly going to be on the final. She told us that already. But one of our mentors, one of our student mentors, they told us, well, you can't write it in class, but as soon as you're done with class, you can go out into the hallway and, type up that question and the answer. And so that's what a lot of people did because our mentors told us we could do it. And so, we took the final exam, and since a lot of people had that system going on where, so like what some people did was, since there's 4 questions, they'd have a group of 4 people, and then everybody was assigned, I would do like question 1 every single day. Somebody else would do question 2 every single day. So we had that spreadsheet of all the questions and all the answers. And so when the final exam time came, we were really prepared for that. Some people, I guess, didn't get the memo from the mentors. And so they didn't do so well. And they felt like everybody else cheated. And so they went and told on the entire 1L class of that year that, oh, this is what people are doing. They obviously could not, because our mentors told us to do it, they couldn't dock us for it because we didn't know any better. And so, yeah, just everybody looked really, frowned upon them. And then my brother tells me stories about how people have been complaining to his dean about the way a professor teaches, even though the professor can teach however she wants to teach. And the method has been approved by the dean before. So they snitch on literally anything that can get you in trouble and try to get you kicked out. Can you get, if you catch them stealing your stuff? Maybe. But people are really slick. They know how to do it without getting caught. And then I have another question here. What did you major in your undergrad? So my undergrad, I went to Texas Women's University in Denton. And I did my bachelor's in interdisciplinary studies with concentrations in English, health studies, and criminal justice. So interdisciplinary studies is kind of like a general studies type thing. And they have like kind of like majors, but concentrations that you can pick and just like take a whole bunch of classes in that particular area. So when I started undergrad, I didn't know that I was going to go to law school. And at that point, I was thinking I was going to like get a PhD in English and become a professor. So that was my first concentration. I took a lot of English classes. And then my mom and my dad, being daisies, they were like, why don't you add that health studies in there? Maybe you'll want to do something in the health studies field. So I was doing some health studies classes as well. And then at the end of my junior year, beginning of my senior year, I decided that, I wanted to check out law school and see if that was something that I wanted to do. And so I added criminal justice in there just to get an idea of some of the kind of classes that they have in law school and like the things that you learn to see if that was something that I enjoyed doing. And I did. So that's what I did in undergrad. But you can really major in anything, like I said, so long as your GPA is good, you should be fine, inshallah. Any other questions? Okay, then if there's no other questions, is it mandatory to practice law after taking the bar exam? You don't have to. Once you're licensed, you just have to continue paying your dues. So once you join the bar, there's a certain fees that you have to pay every year to keep your license. So as long as you keep paying those fees, you don't have to retake the bar exam, and it's not mandatory to practice law. And the thing is, with a legal degree, you don't necessarily have to practice law to do it. There's a lot of law adjacent jobs that are out there. So if you don't want to practice law, but you want to do something that you think having a JD would help you in, definitely check that option out. And that's also an option. Like if you don't pass the bar exam and you decide you don't want to take it again, check out the fields that have that are geared towards law adjacent programs and things like that. So if there's no other questions, I think we will end this program. Please, in the chat box, please take a few minutes to provide your valuable feedback on this program. There's a survey. Let us know how you did, how we did. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out to the Epic Legal Career email, and we can answer those questions that you may have, and then this will also be provided. And then if anybody wants to reach out to me personally because you have more questions about law school and things like that, you can feel free to email me anytime. I am putting an email address on here that I will use just for this. And then we also added if you have any questions, please contact career-counseling@epicmasjid.org. Jazakallah khair, everyone, for coming. I hope this was informative, and yeah, reach out if you have any other questions.